Good morning, guys and gals. Welcome aboard to the Game of Thrones Rewatch Breakdown. Just a spoiler warning, it says Season 1, Episode 1, but this is for the entire TV show and all the books. So if you're trying to catch up, I would avoid this.
And I'm Danielle Yeager, and this is...
I'm Jordan.
And we're going to start with Season 1, Episode 1, and we're just going to go through it scene by scene and discuss. So the first scene, it opens with the White Walkers. So we're north of the wall. We're north of the wall, so I think it's significant that... Okay, so first thing you see is three men of the Night's Watch.
Night's Watch, yes.
Traveling to kind of hunt down some wildlings. That was kind of their mission, and they find bodies laid in almost like a peace sign. Similar, like a
strange symbol in the snow.
A circular symbol of these body parts broken up, and then a child stabbed into a tree, basically, and that's kind of where it opens.
And it's really fascinating because the book opens the same way, but then for the rest of the first season and the entire first book, you don't see the White Walkers ever again. So it's this great bit of, dramatic irony where we as an audience know that the Walkers are real, and yet everyone in the whole kingdom treats them like they're this monster, this fairy tale. And so we know the urgency is not where everyone else in the series thinks it is.
Right. I do think it's interesting that the people know that they did exist. It's not so much a fairy tale as it is like dinosaurs.
Yeah. If someone was like, "There's a T-Rex outside," you'd be like, there hasn't been a T-Rex for forever.
Right. So it's not like, it's kind of lore, but it's more just they're really removed from it, and they think the idea of lots of the things that are north of the wall just don't exist anymore. They don't think giants exist anymore. They don't think White Walkers. They don't think children of the forest. I mean, there's so many things that
all these things that pop up later
think just happened so long ago. But it's not that they don't think they ever existed.
Yeah, that's true. But it is fascinating that we as an audience know this is a very real problem.
Right.
Or we think it's a problem, at least. We're not quite sure yet. But
well, it becomes so much more of the story later on, too. In to your point of, like, it's not even really part of the first season or
because we never see him again until much later on in the series. I don't think they're even mentioned. I don't think they're even mentioned in the first season after this opening.
Are you sure they're not mentioned sometimes when people are at the wall, like with Sam?
Well, they might mention them, but you never see him again. I don't think we actually see him again until the Fist of the First Men.
Maybe, I don't remember.
I don't 100% remember, but I'm pretty sure.
So it's... And then the one guy who sees them, one of the Night's Watch.
The only one who gets away.
And then he goes and gets the other guy. They come back. All the bodies are gone.
Well, and they're still there.
And then White Walkers.
Yes.
And that little girl White Walker. So I wanted to talk about her because I thought it was super interesting. She's the only female White Walker we've ever seen on the show.
Now, is she a White Walker? Or
she has blue eyes. She's a White Walker. And I find that fascinating because what we know about the White Walkers is, one, we only see...
Most of them are Craster's kids.
Well, first of all, we see the adults that look very old, usually. Mm-hmm. That's the majority of what we see. And then we've seen a Craster's baby. Yeah. We've never seen a little girl.
It's true.
Again. And I thought that was really interesting.
It's very true. I didn't even notice that.
What does that mean for White Walkers? And are they...
Can they have little babies?
Yeah. Are they reproducing on their own as well as taking Craster's children? Or was that just a kind of a fluke, like they didn't really think about it at the time, and that's just in the first episode? Because I don't know about the book. I've read the books for the most part, but
I don't remember whether or not it's a girl. I don't know if they mention it's a girl or not in the books.
I mean, she doesn't kill anyone, but she does have the blue eyes.
Yeah.
So she's definitely a walker and not just a white. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
The whites are the zombies. The walkers are the...
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I found fascinating.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I didn't even think of that. So where do we go after the far north?
Okay, so then we open up to Winterfell for the first time, and it had a little, like,
you're
in Winterfell because you don't know what...
They don't tell us that anymore, where we are. But yeah, it has the little caption at the bottom. telling us we're in Winterfell.
Yeah, and it opens up to green. Like, Winterfell
Yeah.
there's no snow.
Winter is still coming. Yes.
It's very much coming because
Yes.
it is beautiful green. Like, they're still wearing their winter
It
clothes.
looks
You can
like-
still see, like, the cold breath at night kind of thing.
I think they shoot Winterfell in Ireland. It kind of looks like Ireland, that kind of northern England. It's very lush green. Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful. We have a plethora of animals who will be joining us also.
There are direwolves and serpents. Oh, and there's cat butthole pointed right at the camera.
Okay. Okay, so we enter Winterfell, and they're preparing for the king to come.
Mm-hmm. But before that, it's Ned is killing the deserter. The guy from the opening scene who ran away from the White Walkers.
Yeah.
So if you leave the Night's Watch, obviously you have to be executed. And Ned, Eddard Stark, Ned for short, is this man of honor, and he feels he needs to do that himself, and his kids need to watch him do it, so that in case they ever have to do it as well.
And actually, before that is Bran is trying to shoot arrows, and he's sucking, and they're all kind of teasing him. Arya and Sansa are supposed to be in there like sewing, and of course, Sansa's doing beautiful work and getting lots of praise, and Arya is having a really hard time because that's not her thing. And then, of course, she goes out, and she's younger than Bran and a female, so she probably hasn't had the same kind of training and encouragement in weaponry.
Weaponry?
Weapons? There's a word there.
Weaponry.
Weaponry.
There's no D.
This is how I got my doctorate.
Uh-huh.
Saying words well.
Dr. Yeager over here.
Anyway, so she comes out and kind of shows him up, and I think that is a good precedent for foreshadowing the people that they're going to be. He might be a male, but his job is not to be dexterous, not to be a fighter.
He wants to be a knight
at that point in time.
And so this idea that Arya, who's never been trained, and
who's younger,
she's a girl, she's never been trained in any sort of weaponry, goes out there and just bullseye.
Right. It's very natural to her. Mm-hmm. That's obviously her strength, but this world is trying to shape her in a different way.
Yes.
And same thing with Bran. The world's trying to shape him to be this knight. The reason he wants to be a knight is because that's something that he could do with his bloodline and his placement in the family. That's a really noble thing to encourage him to do. So I'm sure people have been encouraging him to do that. And in reality, their strengths are not in those places.
Yeah, exactly.
So we see that, then it cuts to Ned taking them,
killing the deserter, and this is important too, because this is the first time Ned is warned of the immediate danger, and he just dismisses it.
I don't know if he dismisses it.
He does specifically say, White Walkers haven't been around for thousands of years. Stop with that. That's not important.
Yeah, I think that he still takes it seriously. I don't think he brushes it off. I think that he has a face of concern.
We've got a storm coming in.
He kind of, I feel like it showed him almost kind of have a little bit of paleness to it, a little bit of seriousness, but he had to follow his duty, even though I feel like it brought some worry to him.
That's true, and that's Ned's whole thing, is his duty.
Right.
Which is interesting, too, because that's his wife's family trait, is, their duty and their honor, and yet Ned that's obviously a Stark trait, too, but that's, those are the words of Catelyn Tully's house.
What are the words of the Tullys?
They are family, duty, honor. Which is interesting because those are Ned's exact values. Those three things.
And I feel like he looks more like a Tully. And I don't know.
Secret Tully.
Yeah. I just mean he has red hair. And
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
he doesn't have the strong Stark features of that Benjen and Lyanna has.
That's true.
So maybe that is meaningful to their connection, and that he's a little bit more like a Tully in his values. Not saying that.
Yeah, not that he's actually a Tully. This scene, though, the main reason this scene is important is because this is when they find the direwolves, the kids.
Right. So that comes next. They are leaving after they beheaded this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they find the direwolf with the stag horns.
Yeah, the stag has killed the direwolf, and the direwolf killed the stag.
Right.
These two animals killed each other, which is kind of foreshadowing.
House Baratheon and House Stark.
Yes,
animals.
that these two houses are going to kind of be the end of each other.
And it's when the direwolf. Speaking, not my screen.
Which is great for a show.
Comes south.
It's true.
So, and that's what Ned is going to do in this episode. He comes south,
Yes.
and they both die. So, does that mean if he had stayed north where he belonged, that wouldn't have happened?
Maybe.
It definitely wouldn't have happened the same way.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
There is.
So that's definitely telling. And then they find all the babies who are still alive. And there's one for each Stark child.
Another foreshadowing. Do you remember what Theon wants to do?
Kill them.
Yeah. This is kind of foreshadowing Theon wanting that revenge against the Stark family that, he doesn't really want to do it, but he feels almost like he has to. And so, yeah, he's going to pick up the puppies and cut their throats, and Bran is actually the one who stops him.
Well, Jon
Bran
and Robb, they all kind of do.
But Bran is the one who cries out and says, don't let him. And then everyone else kind of gangs up on Theon.
Well, and I think Theon also, when a quote from him in this is like, I don't follow your orders, I follow your father's.
That's true.
And so does that showing that
once Ned's
he
gone.
is, right, that once he's gone, and also like when push comes to shove, is he just jealous of all the children, kind of like Jon is, but in his more sadistic way?
Yeah.
So like, these children represent, or these direwolves represent the kids, and he's willing to kill them.
Yeah.
Because the father is dead. So, is that? I mean, that's foreshadowing to he wants to kill Bran and Rick. He would have killed them if he found them. It wasn't that he didn't kill them because he cared for them. He would have killed them.
Yeah.
So he's obviously throughout this is very spiteful, very negative.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is a pain in the ass. Like,
but he gets what's coming to him.
Right. I'm just saying as far as foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we do get our first hair joke in this episode as well. So we go, so we're back in Winterfell, and they're preparing for the king to come because they get a letter stating that Jon Arryn is dead.
The Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, who raised Ned and Robert Baratheon.
Pretty much.
Not pretty much.
I mean, not from birth.
Not from birth.
Yeah. So most,
In the sense that nobility was raised. That's where they trained to be knights and whatnot.
Sure, he was definitely a father figure to them.
Yes.
So it's very sad for Ned. And they don't seem to have any thoughts that, like, this is a conspiracy at this time. Then they get word that the king is coming. They kind of already know what that means, that they're going to be asking Ned to be the hand, if they're going to travel that far as the whole family and everything. Mm-hmm. So then it's a lot of them preparing for that. So all of the sons get they're like shaving and cutting their hair, and that's when we get our first...
Jon gets his beard shaved off, yeah.
And we get our first hair joke about Jon Snow, that he loves his hair more than any woman.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
That was fantastic. Okay, so we get the whole family there. We have Arya putting on a knight's helmet to try to hide a little bit, and she goes up high to look. It kind of reminded me of the end of the season when she's trying to climb up high to look, and she's
looking at the statue,
and she has to disguise herself as well. So I thought that was a nice parallel to what's going to happen later. And then let's see.
We get Jaime Lannister showing up and Cersei telling him, "You should be the Hand of the King," and he, very foreshadowing heavy, says, "I could do without the hand."
And he says, "The hand is something I could do without."
Yes. So just a little, just a little joke that shows up many seasons later, because he will do without that hand. And Robert Baratheon also mentions that he wants Ned to run his kingdom so that he can eat, drink, and whore himself into an early grave.
Right.
So that's a very early grave, because that happens in, 5 episodes? That he drinks himself into an early grave, essentially, with a little help from his family. But yeah, after that, anything else in Winterfell, or is this when we pop right over?
We pop over to Pentos now.
Across the Narrow Sea and go meet the other kind of main driving force in season 1, especially Daenerys.
I think that this first episode is giving you the most important players in the Game of Thrones. It's giving you the Starks, it's giving you the Targaryens, and it's giving you the Lannisters.
Yeah. And that's because that's really all we see in this episode are those 3 families. I guess you count the Baratheons and the Lannisters kind of as one family at this point.
In reality, though, the Baratheons, only Baratheon is the one.
Yeah, besides his brothers, yeah.
In this episode,
the only real Baratheon is him.
If you were newly watching and you haven't read the books, then you would think that all those kids are Baratheons. You would think of Cersei as a Baratheon because she's married into that family, but in reality...
Yeah, we know all the kids. None of those kids are actually the king's children.
Right. Okay, so we go to Pentos, and we have the creepiest brother in existence.
Yes. Old Viserys Targaryen. Don't wake the dragon.
Right.
Don't wake the dragon, which is his saying before he starts beating up his sister.
Yeah. We get baby Daenerys, basically. She looks so little
so
and
young,
tiny
yeah.
and little. And her personality is very much like doe.
She's not obviously trained in the ways of being a lady, but very similar to kind of like Sansa in that she's kind of innocent at this point in time and doesn't really know how the world works. Which is very different from how both those women appear later.
Well, I do think that they are very different, though, at this point in time. I think that Dany is very soft and innocent and passive, and I don't think that Sansa is passive. I think that she is determined for the things she wants.
Yeah, she's headstrong, but...
But she's very naive.
She's very naive, yeah. I guess naive is different than innocent in that case.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Daenerys isn't going to be too innocent for long, so...
Right, so we have her, and then our first foreshadowing is her walking into the very, very hot bath.
Yeah, and everyone, gasps, it's going to be too hot, and she just, it's
no
nothing.
big deal.
So...
And I know lots of people have mentioned, if you watch other theory videos or things like that, people always mention that as proof that she is fireproof and...
Well, and multiple times in the... George R. R. Martin has said that was a one-time thing in the book when she... Blood magic was being involved. When she burns Drogo's body.
He does say that Targaryens have some heat resistance, but they're only fireproof if blood magic is involved. And it varies a little bit from Targaryen to Targaryen.
But on the show...
Same with riding dragons.
Yeah, but on the show we've seen that that's not really the case.
She
is essentially fireproof on the show.
She definitely is.
Yeah.
But we don't know if blood magic was involved in other times that she's burned, but she definitely has a much higher natural resistance than other Targaryens. And the show's building her up to be like a superhero, basically. That's like a superpower.
Yeah, she has magical powers, which very few people on this show do.
But more than just her. We have work. We have special abilities.
But magic is not a common thing in Westeros. Like in some fantasy, magic is fairly common.
Right. It definitely is not the common folks' natural experience.
And it's not common for people to even know people who are magical. Whereas it seems like in Lord of the Rings, everyone knows a wizard, or everyone knows...
Sure. Okay, so that's the main stuff that happens there. They're kind of talking about the fact that she's going to be given away to somebody, but that doesn't happen quite yet before we switch back to Winterfell. I'm
you are
having problems.
On point today.
Winterfell.
It's first episode jitters. You're good.
Okay, so we get Jon swinging a sword at a dummy right away.
Yep.
And I do think it's interesting, if I'm remembering correctly, that we go from the Targaryens and Pintos directly to
Jon Snow.
Jon Snow.
Yeah.
So he meets up with Benjen. Benjen comes back for this.
Yes.
And they talk a little bit about how he wants to go to the Wall, which isn't really foreshadowing because he goes to the Wall like the next episode.
Yeah. So the really interesting thing in this scene for me was when Jon and Tyrion got to have their conversation, which we'll come back to when we talk about kind of theory of Game of Thrones. But what was their conversation kind of focused on?
So Jon's not at the feast with the family, and neither is Tyrion. So they kind of bond a little bit over being outcasts.
Yes. Not accepted by their fathers.
Yeah. Right.
Or I guess mother in Jon's case.
Yeah. And Jon is kind of upset and kind of mopey Jon, and Tyrion is kind of giving him shit. So
yeah.
it's a fun scene.
But he tells him to wear it like armor. He says, hold on to that. Don't let anyone tell you that, because if you admit it first, then they have no power over you. So he says, treat you being a bastard like I treat being a dwarf. If I admit I'm a dwarf openly and freely, then nobody can make fun of me about it because I accept it.
Right. So they kind of bond a little bit. I think Jon is still pissed off. I don't think that he's completely open to it. But
Jon's always pissed off. That's just kind of who he is.
Right. Okay, so then we go back to Pentos, and it's the actual wedding.
Yes.
So we see Daenerys and Drogon sitting up at a place of honor, watching, all of the Dothraki ceremony things happening. I don't know.
Is that what you call it? Rape and murder ceremony, whatever. You've been to a wedding.
And so the interesting part about this is that, you can see that Daenerys is obviously upset, like she's uncomfortable with everything. You see Viserys being like, okay, when are we going? Like, I'm ready to get on with this. Just some earthquakes from dogs happening. And then they're receiving gifts, and one of the gifts of interest is the dragon eggs, which is given to her by her previous person she was staying with.
It's
not family.
Illyrio. He's the guy who's been kind of watching them. We find out later for Varys. He's kind of this is who Varys smuggled the Targaryens to.
Right. So it's a gift from him. He said it's from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai, which we've never been to in the show.
The elephant graveyard. Nothing.
So that is, I find that interesting because we haven't been there yet, and to me that's like, are there more dragon eggs there? Like, what else is there, and what can happen with the things that are there? It seemed like, this is this really cool, expensive gift, but at the same time, it's not like he said these are the last dragon eggs ever.
It's
like,
true.
So I found that interesting.
Who else though? Other interesting point. Who does she meet?
Jorah Mormont.
This is the first time that Daenerys meets her old bear, Jorah Mormont.
And I forget what gift he brings.
He brings books for her about like the history of Westeros and the history of her family, I believe, is what he tells her. But it's who she should learn about her past. But that's, Jorah's like the only Westerosi over there besides the Targaryens, who you can barely consider.
He's the only one who is pretty fluent in the Dothraki tongue.
Yeah, he speaks Dothraki and the common tongue, so...
So obviously he immediately wins her trust, not necessarily her trust, but her confidant.
Yeah.
He becomes her confidant because he can speak both languages, he understands the culture, so like she's feeling lost, and so she trusted him to a degree at least, and she's pretty naive at this point too, even though we now know that he was there originally
for Robert Baratheon
to maybe murder her or get intel on her or what have you. So we know he's not really that trustworthy at this point in time. Of course, we also know he falls in love with her and that changes, but so that's the wedding, and then Drogon gives Daenerys...
Drogon? The dragon?
Drogo.
There you go.
Gives Daenerys the horse.
Her silver, her horse, yes.
Which was a great scene.
Yes.
And kind of showed her first attempt at seeing him as a human instead of this kind of animal.
But then they go by the beach and he takes her by force.
Mm-hmm.
So, not quite in that loving relationship yet, but
No.
it develops though, and develops pretty quickly.
But I think she was genuinely surprised
Yes.
and thankful for the horse,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's showing that he's accepting her as part of that group, because not everyone in the Dothraki gets a horse.
and
Especially
that's
not
a special
women.
horse.
Especially
too.
not women. Most women don't ride horses in the Dothraki horde.
Right, and it's a very beautiful horse.
Yes.
Like it's a unique looking horse that is obviously to mirror the way that she looks.
Yes.
Like the fact that it's silver or white,
Yeah.
and her hair is silver or white. I think shows that he put thought into that.
Yeah.
And shows that he is kind of going against some of the Dothraki standards even at that time.
And that comes up in the next episode too, is what one of her handmaidens tells her, but obviously we'll get to that, yeah. And then finally we cut back to Winterfell for the end of the episode. One thing I did think was really interesting before we get to the last scene, which is, one of the more famous scenes in the show. Sansa, at one point during the feast at Winterfell, is talking to her mother, and she begs her, please make father say yes. And they immediately cut to, in the kitchen, someone just like
Taking a head off.
butchering meat. And so it's, in the books, Catelyn is really the force that pushes Ned to become the Hand of the King, and she doesn't do that in the show as much. She kind of
Not at all.
waffles on. Yeah, she
I
doesn't
feel
want
like
him to go.
She's against him going, and I wouldn't say he's eager to go by any means, but he feels he has to.
He goes
for his
because they
honor.
get the letter from
Which
Catelyn's
is in
sister.
season 2, though. I mean, not season 2, but episode 2.
Oh, was that?
I believe. This episode is mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we'll get to that next time. But so the last big scene is going to be, and throughout being in Winterfell, we see Bran's strengths in climbing.
Mm-hmm.
We see him being extremely dexterous with climbing.
Promises his mother he'll never do it again.
But she
she
knows
knows
he
he's
lies,
lying.
and he admits to lying, so it's going to happen. And so he's climbing this very tall tower that's it's part of Winterfell, but it's far away from...
It's like the walls of Winterfell, yeah.
Right,
So it's
not
far from the
close
buildings
to
inside, yes.
where people are staying. It's definitely, it's almost is kind of abandoned. It's kind of dirty.
Yeah.
And he, curious as he is, watches them, Cersei and Jaime getting it on for too long. He definitely could have gotten away.
He could have. But, I mean, he's a little kid. He's like, what are they doing?
Right.
Yeah. And, we get Jaime's famous line, the things I do for love of the Red Tea.
Yeah. And he
Pushes
him
Bran,
out.
and the last scene we get is, Bran falling towards the ground and hitting right as it cuts to black for the credits.
Right.
So
that's the end of that episode. Lots happens.
there's a bit that kind of points to some of the big theories that people had, some kind of foreshadowing for these big theories.
So what are some of the big theories that you felt like? Definitely Jon, Tyrion, and I would say Bran is the other one I'd want to talk about with theories.
Well, Jon, obviously you get some big time theory with him that was later, just recently in the show, season 6, confirmed. When all the kids are getting their dire wolves, they all get very similar, what you'd think of a wolf looking like, this kind of brownish, grayish. And then Jon isn't going to get one, but he finds a white wolf, which might possibly be the white Targaryen hair, kind of pointing to the R plus L equals J theory way back in episode 1, that Jon is not like the other Starks.
Yeah, and Jon is younger than Daenerys in the books.
Yeah, he's older than Daenerys, because Robb is older than Daenerys, and they're the same age. Yes, because Daenerys is like 13 in the books, and Jon and Robb, I think, are like 15-ish. I might be wrong on that, but I think they're a little.
Never mind,
I think they're a little older. But yes,
But it's also showing he's a Stark too. He gets a direwolf, so he's a Stark, but
it's
he's
a
this
different-
very unique Stark.
It's a different one.
That's a good point.
And then the other one is, we're going on secret Targaryen theories.
Which we are. I mean, come on.
Obviously, everyone's a secret Targaryen.
No, there's just
But there's also the theory that Tyrion might be a Targaryen born of the Mad King
And
hooking up with Tywin's wife.
What's her name? Joanna?
Joanna, I think is her name. Which is possibly why Tywin hates Tyrion so much, and why he hated the Mad King so much and ultimately betrayed him. Because if my direwolf wants her toy. Because if I lost my train of thought now.
Sorry.
But the idea is that Tyrion possibly is a product of this. And in the books, it's much clearer because he has mismatched eyes. One
His
of them being
hair
purple. He has kind of silverish.
It's blonde, but it's
silverish.
Much paler. Yeah.
Yes. So.
Let me just.
No, she's yeah. Just, yeah.
Ugh, she's driving me crazy. Noise.
So this conversation that Tyrion and Jon have, at one point, Tyrion is trying to kind of console Jon. Don't be so mopey, Jon, which is impossible. But
that's how he got the part.
He says, "What do you, Tyrion, know about being a bastard?" And Tyrion says, "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes." Which, he's kind of saying, I wear my dwarfism like other people should wear being a bastard, but there's kind of that hint of my father views me as a bastard, maybe because I am.
He is.
Yeah. And then what do you want to talk about with Bran?
So with Bran, a big theory that's going on now that we know about him being the three-eyed raven and being able to travel back in time and even affect things in the past is that he is some of the past Bran Starks or Bran Starks.
Bran the Builder.
So I thought that the fact that he knows Winterfell so well, he knows every stone. Like when they show him climbing, it's like he doesn't even look.
Yeah,
he knows
each
piece. So I thought that was foreshadowing to the fact, or not foreshadowing, but added to the theory of him being Bran the Builder. It's like he has memorized Winterfell. He knows exactly how to build it and how to design it. And so I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Watching him climb, that is something. It's like when you walk through your house in the dark. And it's like you could probably draw your house just by feel more than actually describing it.
And obviously he is much more talented than most anyone else would be.
Yes.
And he has experienced all of Winterfell through climbing on it. He's been on the rooftops. I mean, he knows every detail inside and out. So I thought that was interesting because it's the last time we get to see him doing that, but we know he's been doing that for years of his 10 years of life. He's probably been doing that for 5 years.
Yeah, since he could. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, not a ton of theory crafting in this first episode. It was mostly kind of introducing our main players, but there is some right off the bat that's kind of being hinted at that later was confirmed. So it's not like this is idle theory. This is stuff that has come true. So we'll see about some of this other stuff.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, now that we're done with theory, is just a little thing for fun that we've been doing for friends, which is we come up with lists when we rewatch this and we have people go through them. So our very first list is hottest Game of Thrones characters.
Yeah, top 10 hottest characters. And we have a pretty diverse group as far as what types people are attracted to. We have women, we have men, we have all sorts of different types and ideas about what makes someone attractive. So you got to vote on 10. Your 10th place got 1 point, your first place got 10 points, and everything in between. So it was weighted depending on where they ranked. So how do we want to? Do we just want to?
So I'll do my own list. You do your own. Then we have our group list.
I don't have. Oh, is this my list? No, this isn't my list. I don't have my list anymore. I think I threw it out. I can tell you who my number one was.
Who's your number one?
Actually, I don't know if I can anymore.
Well, I'll tell you my list anyway.
Oh, no, I can tell you my number one. Missandei was my number one.
Missandei,
the translator for Daenerys Targaryen, is my most attractive person.
Okay, so my list. Now, granted, this is years later. These people are older. My number 10 is Arya. Definitely not season 1 Arya. But she becomes such a badass that it's hard to deny her power. My number 9 was Jojen. Haven't met yet in season 1, but he's one of my favorite characters. Number 8 was Khal Drogo, which we did meet.
Yes. He of the eyeliner.
Yes. Number 7, who we'll meet later, is Daario. And actually, I will specify the second version because the actor was replaced of Daario. My number 6, somewhere. Oh, Shay. And I did specify pre her becoming an asshole.
Yes.
In case you were wondering. My number 5 was Tristane, who I looked up and made sure he was of age as well before I put him down. My number 4 was Tyrion, who we met. And number 3, Jon. 2, Daenerys. And number 1, rest in peace, Oberyn Martell.
Yep.
So our whole group involved like 6 or so
I think
people.
7 people, yeah.
Okay.
Our number 10 was Khal Drogo, he of the eyeliner, which he was an honorable mention on my list, I remember. He didn't quite make it, but... Number 9 was Osha, the wildling, who joins up with...
She was on your list.
She was on my list. She did play Tonks in Harry Potter, so I kind of had a crush going from that.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8 was Yara, who I think probably only really recently joined the hottest because of how sassy she's become.
Not sassy. I liked her interaction with Daenerys.
Yes,
It was very enjoyable.
Number 7 was Marjorie Tyrell.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Marjorie. I guess we could say that for
for
3 of these 4 that we've said so far. Number 6 was Ygritte, the wildling that Jon Snow falls in love with, which... Okay. Number 5 was Sansa
Was she
Stark.
on your list?
No.
Sansa's on your list.
Sansa's on my list. Sansa has become a very attractive lady.
Uh-huh.
Number 4 was Melisandre, the Red Woman. I imagine she was on a lot of people's lists just because she gets naked a lot. And she's a lovely lady, but yes, I think she kind of jumps up on a lot of people's lists. Number 3 was he of the Pouts, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow.
Rest in peace, and welcome back. And then number 2 was Daenerys Targaryen.
Uh-huh.
And number 1, he was on my list as well. He was on, I think, everybody's list.
Who was number 1?
Oberyn. I think Oberyn Martell, the Inigo Montoya of Westeros,
So
was
sexy.
on everybody's list, and he owned it. That was like totally his personality. It was
Right.
just, I am like the walking embodiment of sex. That was his whole thing.
So those were that was my top 10 list and our entire group's top 10 list, but we want to hear your top 10 list.
Yes.
So in the comments below, we'd love to hear your top 10 hottest characters, Game of Thrones, anytime in the seasons, dead or alive.
Yep.
Your discretion, what you determine makes someone hot. And if you have any comments on anything we talked about in season 1, add that below as well.
Anything we missed, anything like that. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. We'll be getting these up fairly regularly, so we'll have some more of these for you soon. Thanks for watching.
Our plan is to go through all of the seasons before season 7 comes back on. So, and then we'll go through season 7 with you together.
That'll be fun. Well, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and check out some of our other videos. See you around.
Bajalas Mogules? How do you say it?
Something like that.